Dr. Daniel, if you will, please identify yourself. I know who you are, but 50 years from now, as we're talking about, somebody might not be quite sure, and so if you just tell us who you are and all that sort of thing. Something about where you were born, your parents, and maybe when, if you would like to do that.
I'm David Eason Daniel, the Eason with an E-S-O-N, which is fairly uncommon. I was born in Gaffney, South Carolina, which is 50 miles south of Charlotte, not too far across the line in South Carolina. September 13, 1936. And as you well know, September the 13th was James Larkin Pearson's birthday.
Yes.
And it also Betty Jo Burcham, my administrative assistant's birthday. That's a great, great day.
Yeah, we sort of think so.
My father was an 8th grade dropout. He worked, he joined the Navy when he was 14 years old, and when he was 15 they found out how old he was and kicked him out. And then he traveled the country. He hopped freight trains and so on across the country a couple of times, and wound up in the CCC camps, you recall, and he was in that, and then he worked in a textile mill. When I was born in Gaffney, as I said, in September of '36, within 2 or 3 months we moved to Grover, North Carolina, which is just a little village, mill village, just into North Carolina.
Right.
And he worked in a textile mill there, and his hours were ungodly. He went to work at dark and he came home at dark, and his pay at that time was $8 a week. And so that was the first few. My mother, of course, just stayed at home. She looked after me, and when the war broke out, we were in Concord, North Carolina. My father had graduated from the textile mill and was working with Sturkey Furniture Company. How he made that transition, I'm not sure, but at age 6, my sister was born in Concord, Melissa, and my father had gone away to war, the Second World War. And when that occurred, we moved back to Gaffney and lived with my grandmother on what was then College Drive in Gaffney. It's now, no, it was then Victoria Avenue. It's now College Drive. And we lived there until he came home. He came home, I never will forget, somewhat as a stranger, because I was young when he left, and we had to get to know each other again. That was quite an experience for me. And it really was for my sister, because she was much younger. And then he started into the painting business, painting houses. And he, over a period of several years, finally became a contractor doing his own work. And that was the atmosphere in which I grew up. My first job was at 9 years old, when I delivered the Gaffney Ledger for a few months, and then I got the Spartanburg paper, Spartanburg Journal. I delivered that paper until I was 14, when I could get a Social Security card. And so from the age of 9 on, I pretty much made my own way, because a house painter in those days didn't bring home a whole lot of money. But we were, you know, I've heard it said many times, as have you, we were poor, but we really didn't know we were poor. You know, we ate 3 meals a day and got along all right. I was the first one to go to college in the family, and that was a pretty big event.
Sure.
And it scared the daylights out of me, because I was being the first, and I had to make it work. And so I went to Furman University in Greenville, and I'll never forget, as long as I live, I was petrified at the experience of just being there. And I worked very, very hard. I studied every day. My preparation was not all that good. And at the end of the first semester, I got my report card, and I had 5 C's. Those were the most beautiful C's I've ever seen. You know, that said, okay, bud, you might make this successful. And then from Furman to, by this time I went to Furman in '54, finished in '58, and had a deep-seated feeling that my life was supposed to mean something in this old world in terms of helping people. The only thing I knew at that time was the ministry, and my scope was very narrow at that time in terms of how you went about doing that. And the first thing that would come to mind, well, you do it with the church, you know. And so I went away to what was then Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania, which was quite a departure. First place, people who were in the South were supposed to go to Southern Baptist seminaries, and to break the traces, so to speak, was not very common. But the president of the seminary was a man by the name of Sankey Blanton. He was a North Carolinian, born around Shelby. He was dean of the School of Religion at Wake Forest University for many years. He was pastor of the Baptist Church in Wilmington for many years. Great Southern Baptist, and had quite a reputation, quite a preacher. And he wound up somehow as president of this seminary in Pennsylvania, and he recruited me at Furman, came to see me, and encouraged me to go up there, and he was the only one that did. And so I went. And by this time, I was married to Dee Dee, just the senior year of the second semester of senior year at Furman. So we went away to Pennsylvania and stayed for 3 years, graduated with a master's degree there in 1961. Then came to, I had 2 opportunities at that time to go to Boston University to work on a doctorate, to go to Emory University in Atlanta to do the same thing, and the only problem was I didn't have any money, and didn't have any prospects of any money, and I couldn't call on anybody else for any support. The best thing looked like it might be the Emory thing, because I had had several conversations with a man by the name of Arnold, who was the head of the Protestant Radio and Television Center in Atlanta, and he had promised me some freelance work with that organization. Didn't go, because in the meantime I was doing some speaking at the Baptist Church in Zebulon, because they didn't have a preacher. And I was told when I went there, I think probably Sankey Blanton told the Dr. Massey there that I might do good to fill in for him. And I was told when I went there, now we're going to listen to you, we're glad to have you, but don't have any thoughts about being our preacher because you're too young and inexperienced. And so I was fine, I'm going to Atlanta anyway. But the money was good. They were paying $50 a Sunday, and that was mighty good for morning and evening. They had evening services. So I did that for a week, and they came up and said, would you do it another week? And I said, sure, I'll do it another week. And I came back and did that, and then they came back and said, would you do it one more week? And I agreed to do that. And at the end of the sermon service on that Sunday night of the third week, a man came up and he said, I want you to meet with a group of people here. And so I went back to this group of people in the corner of the sanctuary, and in short, they said, we want you to be our minister. Well, that was a shock because I didn't expect it, but we went. And Dee Dee and I were there, and Jody was born by this time. We were there for a little over 2 years, and then the Methodist, I was Baptist then, the Methodist preacher was a trustee of Lewisburg College, 20 miles away. It's 30 miles north of Raleigh. And he and I became fast friends. We're both young, and we didn't cotton to a whole lot of denominationalism anyway. We had our people meeting together and even shared communion and all that stuff, which was heretical.
Yes, it was at that time.
And he asked me one day if I'd like to ride over to Lewisburg College with him. He was a trustee, and he had a job to do over there. And I said, sure, I'll go with you. Went over there and met the president, who was Cecil Robbins. And got to know each other. He said, "What's your background?" And I told him that it was in the New Testament, where I sort of specialized, and in sociology, which was the other major. He said, "I'm looking for somebody to teach New Testament and sociology, and I just want one person, can't have two." And so, to make a long story short, I spent 12 years there, and had an extremely good time. And that was when I changed from Baptist to Methodist. My thought there that the Methodists were putting the bread on the table, so I ought to align myself with them, and that's what I did. Then after 12 years there, just dropped everything and went back to school. Went to North Carolina State and worked on a doctorate there. Finished that up in latter part of 74, early 75. Went to Isothermal Community College as Dean of Instruction. Stayed there a couple of years, and then, as fate would have it, wound up here at Wilkes Community College, 1977, July 1 officially, although I had been here sometime prior to that on visits and trying to feel the lay of the land. I've often said that in this life everything's connected to everything else. There's a reason and purpose behind most everything. I really believe in the overarching providence of God. I don't believe that He calls every shot, because we would be puppets then. But I believe that there is an overarching providence, and that as we are attuned to that, sensitive to that, that we can, and work within it, then we can achieve the greatest good. Everything in that context then is connected to everything else. If I hadn't gone to Pennsylvania, then I wouldn't have gotten to Zebulon. If I hadn't gotten to Zebulon, I'd have never gotten to Lewisburg. If I hadn't gotten to Lewisburg, I'd have never had an opportunity to go to State. If I hadn't gone to State, I'd never gotten to Isothermal. And if I hadn't had all of that experience, I would never be qualified to be here. And so that's the only way I know to look at it.
Well, you know, I don't know whether I told you this just now, I don't think I have, but every time Austin Adams and I get together, we pat each other on the back for being so bright as to realize that you were the man for the college when you came over. Well, it happens every time you and I get together when anything is going on around here.
I appreciate that. It's my good fortune, I assure you.
Well, it's our good fortune, quite frankly. And I did want to ask you one or two things that you sort of went over, but you sort of neglected them too. About your immediate family, you mentioned when you indeed were married, but who was she? Ivor,
that's I-V-O-R, Gayle, G-A-Y-L-E, Blanton.
Because when I had her in a class over here once, you know, I didn't know who she was till I saw her, then I realized
right.
I did.
She's a great lady.
Yes, she is a wonderful person.
She and I met first when she was 13. I'm a bit older than she. But we both had an interest in the band, the high school band, and she was a French horn player. I was a saxophone player, and I was the drum major of the band, the high school band. And she was dating, she just started dating, obviously at 13 years old, my best friend named Jimmy Lee, and a red-headed fella. And but I had my eye on her a little bit, and but I wouldn't do anything, you know, as long as Jimmy was.
Sure.
But they split, and then shortly thereafter we started dating, and dated all through high school till I left, went to Furman, and then when she graduated from high school, she came to Furman. By this time, I'm an upperclassman, and I've been there for several years, and here she comes, a new freshman, and my behavior at that time was not such that she approved of, because I had another girlfriend or two by this time, and I'd been able to keep it separated by the fact that she was in Gaffney and I was in Greenville, and all of a sudden here she is in Greenville. And she didn't like that too well, and I can understand that. And she transferred to Brenau College in Gainesville, Georgia. And I let that go on for a while, and then sent her a telegram, told her to come back, that it was time for us to make it official. And so she came back. We were married February 22nd, 1958, on a snowy day. And then our son Jody was born when we were in Pennsylvania. And he now is 20, he's 27 or 28 years old, and is a warehouse manager for Lowe's companies at their big new store in Gaffney, of all places, where we were born. It's kind of coincidental. She now is works for Interstate Securities for Buddy Forrester, and she also keeps books for B Towns. So she is quite busy. Two full-time jobs, and as you know her, she's never met a stranger.
Oh no.
And is a joy to be with.
Well, she was a real joy in class because she kept the class totally alive every moment she
Right.
was there. And when she wasn't there, we felt like, well, we might as well not have had classes those days. A few times she did miss.
Yeah.
And I never have forgotten how she always said, "What's my grade? I got to know, because I got to make a good grade." I said, "You're going to have to earn it." Well, she always did earn it.
Yeah.
And, I think I reported to you once when she had been absent maybe, or didn't, she wanted to know what her grade was, and I told you before she found out or something, but anyway. She was a real pleasure in class, and I enjoy seeing her now because she's one of the most alive people I've ever seen, Doctor.
She is. She has great intellect. She's got a wonderful personality. Now, only one thing though, you don't push her ahead of her own schedule.
No, I don't think
That's about like trying to floorboard a 37 Chevrolet. It won't work. And so you let her move at her own speed, and she'll get there.
Well, she seemed to certainly keep up with what she's doing in those classes, and I've always been
If she
grateful.
sees this, and having heard me say that, she'll kill me.
Well, I won't let her see it for a while. But anyway, it's nice to know something about her. That's the thing that I feel like is important about these tapes personally, is the fact that we see you and see the people that mean something to you very much in your life, as they really are. I mean, all the cut and dried is fine, but I mean, that's one reason sometimes I interject things that maybe I shouldn't bring up. But, well, anyway, let me ask you something. You were talking something about, tell me something about your youth. Now, you mentioned the fact that you did work when you started out when you were 9, and that you a little something about your school. What are some things you were really interested in as a child, do you recall? Or were you so busy you didn't have time to?
Well, it was quite busy. When I was 14, I got that Social Security card and went to work at the Hamrick Theater. And I worked 44 hours a week for $10. I'm not sure I was paid quite 10, but at any rate, what my job, and I hate to say this, but this was the way it was. The Hamrick Theater had a large floor, and then it had a balcony, and I ran the balcony, which was for black people.
That's right. It's the same as.
And I sat at the door, which was a large metal door in a cane-bottom chair, and I had a little wooden box. And when they came in, it was 30 cents a head. We didn't make any distinction, as they did downstairs, whether you were 12 or under or 12 and over. Up there, it was 30 cents a head. And it was my responsibility to take that money and to keep order, as if we wouldn't have order. We always had order. But one of the responsibilities I recall was to make sure that there was no smoking up there, in addition to the other stuff. So if you can imagine, by the time I get out of school and go straight to the theater and stay there till it closes, and work all day Saturday in order to get 44 hours, there wasn't much time for anything else.
No, sure wouldn't have been.
So that went on for a while, and then I moved from the Hamrick Theater to the Cherokee Theater, which was right next door. And there I learned to operate the projectors. 2 huge simplex projectors, and the carbon arc bounced off a huge mirror glass circular through an opening of the aperture onto the screen, and you had reels, huge reels with last about 20 minutes each, and you had to change over from one machine to the next, and while this one was running, you prepared the next one. back and forth like that. I learned how to do that, and by now I'm about to get out of high school, and being in the band and working at the theater and going to school, then those were my only interests. I didn't have time for anything else. That's right. So when I went to college, and by the way, I also worked all day on Sunday, but I had a different job on Sunday. I went to the radio station. Manager of the local radio station in Gaffney was Mort Green, and I wanted to learn how to do that. And he said he didn't have anything for me. And I said, well, I'll do anything. Let me learn how to do it, and I'll work for you on Sundays, and won't charge you anything until you think I earn it. Well, I hit a sensitive spot, because in the radio business, nobody wants to work on Sunday. And so he took me up on that, and I learned the board. I got me a third-class license, and I signed on Sunday morning and signed off on Sunday afternoon. It was 250 or 500 watt station, I've forgotten. And on Sunday afternoon was when the preachers came in. 15 minutes, $6.65 for 15 minutes, $13.25 for 30 minutes. And I took the cash on the barrelhead and then let them go on the air in the studio right next door. And I did that for a few weeks, and he decided I was worth some money, so he started paying me a little bit. And I'll never forget some of those people. One of them was named Tommy Frady. Tommy Frady worked in the mill in Gaffney, and on Sundays he preached, and he came out on Sunday afternoon, every Sunday afternoon, and had a little troop with him. And he'd start off every segment with a prayer. So let us pray. At some point in the prayer, he'd say, Lord, bless our pronouncer, talking about me, on the other side of the glass. And he would say, inevitably in his sermon, this program is based on grace, grit, and greenback, and we ain't getting enough greenback. That was Tommy Frady. But that was quite an experience. But when I went to Furman, to college, I, on Wednesdays, operated the projectors at the Plaza Theater all day to let that man off one day a week. And then all of the other days, I worked at the radio station, WMRB in Greenville, from 6 to midnight. This was my shift, because the radio Gaffney experience had gotten me into that market. And indeed, when I finished college and went to Pennsylvania, I went to a radio station on Edgemont Avenue in Chester. It was first WDRF, your Delaware River Ferry Station. It later changed to WEEZ. And for the first year of graduate school, I ran an afternoon shift there, and also was a ticket agent on the Chester-Bridgeport Ferry that ran across the Delaware River. So when you consider the music, which has always been a part of the Furman Band, and the work and the studies, then again, I couldn't participate in sports or anything else for that matter because of the time element.
Sure.
But the experiences were invaluable.
Well, let me ask you this, because of what you're saying, don't you think that really young people today don't have enough to do in some ways?
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
they have so little responsibility, basically. Now, you had responsibility from the time you were a small child right on up, and you accepted that.
I read an article in Time magazine a week or so ago about an Indian tribe in Arizona, I believe, on a reservation. So unemployment among the eligible people to work is 74%. Yet every person on the reservation is getting $300 a month because of oil rights. Within 6 months, 9 of their young men between the ages of 16 and 24 hung themselves, because the only thing they had to do was sit and look at each other and draw their $300. Well, there isn't anything to live for doing that.
Certainly.
And you know, I think there's such a thing as enjoying life and having a good time and playing hard. I believe in working hard and playing hard.
So do I.
But I do agree that there's too much idle time. Uh, I believe that people ought to always have a project. They ought to always have something going that keeps interest up. I can't foresee the time that I wouldn't have anything to do. I wouldn't know what to do.
Well, that's the reason that I feel the way I do about being here at the college. I've been continuing on since I retired. And talking to so many older people, much older than I am. The comment has been, well, when I said to Dr. Hubbard's wife a few years ago, and she's 80-something now, she was around 80 then, I said, do you think I should retire when I'm 65? She said, Lord, no, it'll kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of these older people have said the same sort of thing, the importance of keeping busy. I have to stay busy.
Absolutely.
I mean, I grew up that way,
Yeah.
and I feel sorry for young people because they really don't have the responsibility a lot of times that they need.
Yeah. Well, my experience has been that if you look at the people who have the greatest responsibility in this country, who are chairman of the biggest corporations, they're usually people who have had to work hard all their lives.
Of course they are.
Who've come from somewhat meager circumstances. That's not to say that there aren't good people who've had the silver spoon. I don't mean to imply that, but there is a great value in the work ethic.
Yes, there is.
And I believe in it very strongly.
Well, I do. Now let's see. Let me ask you this: since you've been involved in education, Doctor, I mean, as a profession, what are some of the major changes you've seen, or had you thought about them? I'm sure you probably run into a lot of them. And just the way of doing.
Well, education is like anything else. It's cyclical. We go through cycles, and the pendulum swings and it swings back, and there's always innovation and always some things different from ever before. But you can see history coming back with some of the same types of things. I think we have reached a stage in our civilization that we now know full well that you don't do anything without the proper foundation. We